I'm joining you from an Airbnb in Blue Ridge, Georgia, tucked away in the woods near a river. It's very nice. One day I hope that my filming background will just look like this all the time when we move to the woods. I want to take advantage of this beautiful setting and film a video, but this one's going to be kind of like weird and rambly, okay? So stick around if you're interested on this subject. The subject is changing the evolution of the way that we listen to music. So the reason this all came up is the other day I was sitting on my desktop computer working on something. So I pulled up iTunes and I saw that my library was not in there. Only the things I had purchased from the iTunes store, like all the stuff that's also on the cloud, was in there, and that was it. So I had about 16,000 songs that were just not there. And obviously, like, I'm not panicking because I still have the files, they're just not on my iTunes library anymore. The files are still like individual MP3 files that are stored somewhere else. But I started trying a few things to get my library back the way it was, because I like the library because it has play counts and playlists. Like, I like the data and the organization that comes along with it, like my listening history and all that. So I was fooling around, like trying to find a way to revive it. I'm not looking for advice in this video or anything, but it was not easy to find an answer. And I finally was able to like load a previous version of my library from at least a couple years ago. It wasn't the most recent, and it was not the way that all the instructions said you'd be able to do it. Anyway, all this got me thinking, like, the way that I came up listening to music is being pushed into obsolescence, and I feel it. And I have a lot of gripes about that. There's a lot of inconveniences that come with that. Well, first of all, I still listen to my iPod, and I love listening to my iPod because it's just a really like nice compact way of storing all that music, which I don't really want to carry around on my phone because I carry podcasts and pictures on my phone. Anyway, and it's nice to be able to listen to music on the go without draining my phone battery. Also, I just like my iPod. But I feel like the way I listen to music, which is primarily listening to MP3 files, digital files, it's being pushed. It's being pushed to the side to make way for streaming. Okay, so when I was coming up, I didn't start listening to music until I was 10, when I got a radio. So I was primarily listening to the radio. After a couple years, I got a CD player and I was listening to CDs. And then by the time I got to high school, the iPod came out. So I went from carrying this huge suitcase of CDs to an iPod and using an FM transmitter to play the iPod in the car. So when I got the iPod, my first one was 30 gigs, and then you have to manually add all your music in there. So CD by CD, you are adding those tracks into your library. And if it didn't automatically like populate the album names and track names and the genre and all that stuff, like, you had to put it in yourself. It was a labor of love. It was something you were really proud to be able to like catalog all your music in this digital format. It was really cool. And in addition to digital formats, there was some downloading of MP3s at that time, friends burning CDs for each other. And another thing that was really great was being able to trade music with people by plugging your hard drives into each other's computer and dragging and dropping MP3 files. That was awesome. That was a great way to like hang out with people for the first time, or to like get to know people. And that's how I got a lot of my music, especially after I stopped downloading. I would just trade with people. And there's something about like having the files. I know they could just disappear with the click of a button. It's not the same as having physical media. But even like having those files, regardless of subscription or what program you're using or whether or not you have the internet or whatever, having those files is so empowering. And the fact that that's moving aside to make way for streaming, I find streaming really strange. Anyway, so when I got my iPod, my 30 gig iPod, it was like, I think it was either $350 total or $400 total when I like bought the case to go with it. It was wild, but I had a job at Kmart, so I could afford it. And then in 2008, Zach got me a 130 gig iPod, and that's the one that I still use today. And I've still been updating it. Like when I buy a new CD, I'll still add it to my iTunes library and then onto my iPod. I really liked iTunes library on the computer when I would spend a lot of time at my computer. I don't spend that much time on my computer nowadays, but I still like to have it there and to play music off of it and just that to be my home base for my music. But then when this like iTunes just decided to reset itself, I just feel like Apple doesn't want me to do what I'm doing. They want me to move on. And I know it'll probably be forced upon me eventually. I know one day I'm probably going to have to change how I do things. One day my iPod isn't going to work anymore. It's going to die. One day iTunes isn't going to be the way it is now. But I don't know if I'll ever get Spotify. I don't know if I can do it. Let me say though, I do stream a little bit with the Amazon Prime Music app. I only have the basic one. I don't have the one you pay extra for. But that is kind of nice when I'm like on the go or just like want a quick little hookup or whatever. But that's not what I rely on. That's like my supplementary. And I also do like CDs, especially in the car. I like listening to an album in full. I like listening to it on repeat to really get to know the album. And I think that's probably the best way to do that. I've never been a girl who listens to vinyl. I don't know if I ever will, because for me, music on the go is important when you're driving or when you're outside or on a walk or what have you. There's so much that I could say on the subject and how the acquisition of music and how the enjoyment and listening of music is changing so rapidly, how I've seen it change over the years, and I can't even anticipate how it's going to continue to change. So I don't want to ramble on about this subject. There's so many little corners I could get into and talk about, but mostly I just wanted to like come here today to talk about my iPod. There's actually like a little grave behind me. So it's almost like this is a funeral for my iPod. Not saying I'm going to stop listening to it, but I have to be prepared. It's like it has a terminal illness. I have to be prepared to let it go at any time. So I thought I'd just kind of like run through how I've got things set up, talk about my most played songs because that's going to get lost. Because at this point I can't sync my iPod with my iTunes or I'll lose some of that data. So before we get into my iPod, I did want to say a little bit about streaming. I feel like streaming, there's something inauthentic about it. I feel like it's not very metal. And a few years ago, a metalhead would scoff at you for saying, oh, I listened to that off of YouTube or something, or I guess before streaming was really a thing. Listening to something off of the internet seemed really inauthentic. And I feel like I haven't read other people's opinion on this, so this is just my like uninfluenced opinion. I'm sure there's some good conversation out there, especially like interviews with metal artists, but I can't help but think that metal artists don't really like streaming either. But I see them getting on board. I see them getting on board with Spotify because it's what you have to do to survive. I don't know if I'll ever get Spotify. There's something that's so weird about the music I love depends on me paying a subscription. The music I love could get removed at any time, depending on how the service provider does their stuff. The music I love depends on if I have an internet connection. That's disturbing. I can't get on board with subscription culture. I can't do it. Even though like a show is available on Hulu or whatever, I still feel like I need to buy it because you never know when it's going to get taken off Hulu. You never know when your internet's going to go out for an extended period of time. You know what I mean? I just love having physical media. I don't know if that will ever change. I guess with streaming, I feel like I don't have ownership. I don't have it. I'm just borrowing it. That's it. That's weird. And I know that MP3s and digital files aren't really considered that authentic either. Not always the best quality. I know that met with some resistance back in the day too, but that was how I could obtain it. So I just ate it up. They were still mine. But now I kind of feel like MP3s are kind of like old school, moving into obsolescence as well. Almost like weird to be listening to. I feel like I'm in a weird place of like hanging on to something that's not the optimal way to listen anymore and resisting streaming and the future of music listening. Also, though, never really embraced vinyl records as well. And then CDs, right? Like, I keep leaning back towards CDs, but then I think about how much space that takes up. Like, physical space in your home. So I'm really interested to know, other metalheads out there, how do you guys listen to music? What do you do? Do you stream? Do you do records? What about when you're in the car? What do you do? What about when you're on a walk in the park? How do you listen to music? Do you still use MP3s, iPod's? Do you still have the files? Do you still have the physical copies? Or do you just stream? And how do you feel about that? I listened to a TED Talk called Streaming is Killing Music. Not saying that I think streaming is killing music or whatever, but the intro, the way he talked about like how music has been packaged over the decades was really interesting. But hearing how streaming is changing how people write music is scary. Getting older is just weird because you like things a certain way. Like, you like Windows 7. You like Microsoft Word 2017. You like your iPod and how that whole thing operates. But nothing lasts in technology. And it's hard to keep changing and resetting everything all the time. So I'd just like to know how you guys feel about music listening, music acquisition, forced obsolescence, all that stuff. Because everything's just so ephemeral. Even the music you love, any of it could just disappear. I think about like Fahrenheit 451, where they got rid of all the books that were ever written. I always think like that could happen with music, and all you'd have is just remembering how those songs went in your head. Or if you know how to play some of the songs. But I just clutch my music so close to my heart, and it's hard for it to see it change shape when I'm trying to hold it close to me. If that makes any sense. Anyway, so let's get into my iPod. I had to go get the iPod out of my car, and see, that reminded me of another reason why the iPod is great. Because when we did not have service driving through these Georgia mountains and we couldn't stream, just plug in the iPod. You don't need service, you don't need internet, you don't need a subscription. So this is it. It's 130 gigs, bought in 2008. It's got 16,261 songs. I have a favorites playlist, which has about 1,100 songs on it of my favorite songs. And then it tracks stuff, you know, like what was most played. So let me look at my most played list. Top 25 most played. This will be revealing. A lot of Birthday Massacre, just lots of Birthday Massacre. Combi Christ, Death, Watain, lots of Watain, and that's it. That's my top 25 most played. I'm not going to tell you all the tracks because it's just a bunch of the same artists. And I even have like my college top 100, like my most played from college years. So the last time I redid my iPod, I like made that little playlist because it was going to erase my play counts. So we have Scarling, Dax Riggs, Placebo, Birthday Massacre, Worldane, I Hate God. I had to listen to mostly stuff that was a little more melodic so that my like roommate and sorority sisters wouldn't be so scared. Typo Negative, Portishead, Sleep, Electric Wizard, Ladytron, more listenable stuff. Lots of Dresden Dolls in college as well, Tiamat. When I think about college and like listening in the presence of others, it was always the Birthday Massacre or Placebo. That was it, because that's all people could handle. But yeah, I had a lot of cool playlists made out on here. So yeah, I'm gonna use this for as long as I possibly can, with the awareness that it's going to be lost one day. And it's scary, but you know, when something is important to you, you'll do whatever it takes to keep it in your life. So even if I lost all my files, I'd find a way to keep my favorites still blasting in my ears. So this concludes my strange ramble about iTunes, MP3s, and versus streaming. I'd be curious to know your thoughts as a music fan. It doesn't have to be metal, just like if you are a music junkie too, how have you coped with the last 20 years? I've literally been listening to metal almost 20 years now. Yeah, so do let me know. Sound off below and I'm going to go enjoy my vacation here in the Georgia Blue Ridge Mountains. Bye!